Well, this has been a long time coming, this one. Supersonic, where the words kind of make not a huge amount of sense in the best possible way. Lots of mentions of yellow submarines and sunshine, or sunshine, I should say. But it's got a really cool opening lick with this kind of, almost like playing the harp. And then you've got the really kind of Blur-esque heavy riff with the... So we're going to go through all of that in this lesson series, but if you're an Oasis fan like I am, do subscribe for more lessons on Oasis. We have others on Songbird, Live Forever. There's also a chord sheet for Wonderwall that's available, all on our tab section. But let's dive into this one then. Standard tuning and a nice slow little opening riff. And we're going to start off with this high pick glissando. It's quite hard to actually get this bit right with the high gliss pick. So what you need to do is look for your bolt that's in your bridge pickup here. We're on the bridge pickup for the whole of this track. And when you scrape the pick across, you don't want to start higher than that, otherwise it doesn't work. So if you listen carefully, you're way low on the pitch. It's because your guitar's picking up the wrong side. It's picking up this note here. Whereas once you pass that point, it starts picking up this tiny little distance here. And that's what we're trying to do on our bottom E string there, so the low E string. Also with the pick scrape, try and tilt your plectrum forwards. So instead of your normal playing position, if you tilt it forwards and play with the sort of the top edge bit here, you'll be able to achieve that sound. Also, you have to play it so slowly. It lasts for the whole of the introduction section. So that happens over all of this stuff. So try and, if you're playing that part of it in the beginning, just try and make sure you scrape as slow as you possibly can. It's tough to do, but it does achieve that sound. For the intro itself then, like I said at the beginning in the introduction, it kind of sounds a bit like a harp. So Noel Gallagher doesn't really do alternate picking very much. He tends to take quite a straightforward approach to playing guitar, as you would. So he does this 3 downs and then ups to follow. So he has 3 downs on this chord, and then all up picks following the other direction. Now let's talk about the chord itself. This whole piece of music is in a kind of F sharp minor, so 2nd fret is F sharp if you do your bar chord there. F sharp minor. Is the kind of the center tonality. What's happening here is that you're essentially forming that F sharp minor chord. But you're leaving your first finger out of the top two strings. So the way you set it up is you do a third and fourth finger on those fourth frets, and then the first finger on that G string on the second fret. So you've got this. That coupled with the open strings is what gives you that really awesome sound. And it's like an F sharp minor chord with an E in the top, which is the seventh. So an E and a B. Really beautiful chord. So that's how the initial chord shape setup works. Then we're going to talk about the picking pattern again. So you've got 3 downs, and then 4 ups. And then at this point, you've got to move your hand while playing that open A string to an A power chord, but you're letting the B and E strings ring out again. So, and then you swap over to a B7. So, and then you move back into position. Quite hard to kind of get those chord shapes in position. I'm so used to playing an A minor, but you need to do an A minor but take the first finger out of action and play the open B string. So that's the chord at the start of bar 6, and then you move to this B7. So the frets are 2, 1, 2, and the fingers are 2, 1, 3. So that sequence is, and then you move. So once you've mastered that, it happens 4 times, so you want to kind of get the hang of that opening introduction section there. The next thing that we're going to do is do the sort of variation here, which is following through Noel Gallagher's part up to the start of verse 1. So you get one final one of these in bar 7. And then this time you get... And then Noel hangs on to that note while Bonehead goes. So just at the end of bar 8, we're going to put our delay pedal on. I've got some settings that you can check out if you fancy copying a little bit of the sound here. It's not absolutely perfect, but a pretty good approximation here of just getting a little bit of that shimmer. So you do a first finger bend at the end of bar, or towards the middle of bar 8, and then jump up to that 4th fret with your 3rd finger. Let that note kind of ring out, so, and then you get this. So 4th finger, 1st finger, 2nd finger on that 7th, 5th and 6th frets. All up picks there, and then it repeats a few times, so we go back to... And what you can do to stop the open A string ringing out is you can mute it away with the 1st finger there. So that comes round 4 times. On the 4th time, you get the shimmery bit at the top again. And there's a little slide down that time that Noel does. And then what you get is him strumming an E major chord. So we can leave the shimmer on actually for Noel's bit here, because he doesn't really turn it off and then turn it back on. He just kind of goes. So he does a few offbeat things for these 2 bars here. We've got bar 17. And he comes back into, which is on the beat of bar 19, so slightly different. What's happening when Noel's doing this, by the way, this E? Bonehead does something different, which we're going to cover in a later video, but essentially, if you want to know why there's bits in brackets, it's because Bonehead's going. He's doing things like that, strumming along with a 12-bar blues type vibe. So I mentioned bar 19, we're coming back on the beat with our delay pedal still on, and then we've got bar 21, 22, so we've got Noel just doing this. For ages, Bonehead does that same. Then what happens is Noli carries on with this part. So it's a C sharp 7 chord. The delay's still on, and this is the little picking pattern, which is quite nice. So that works by doing a down, then you play these notes, up next, down, up, and then you have to move your 3rd finger to be able to achieve those last 2 notes. So once again it goes. And then we're moving on to chorus 1, so we turn the delay off, and then we're going to do. But with no delay. So we had a little dead note, and then we're sliding into that 4th fret with the 3rd finger. It's all down picks. In bar 26, when you get the 2nd slide, so you get. You just got to kind of almost create the slide there, so you just have to drop a little bit and slide back in. Use that 3rd finger, slide up from that 2nd fret in bar 26, and then it continues. So that carries on a few times. Then there's a time in bar 31 where you just get. The only time that it doesn't really slide is that particular time, but don't worry too much if you're going to carry on with the slides. Now, one thing I want to mention, if you're a kind of harmony theory geek, a little bit like myself, the chords underneath that Bonehead is playing, which we are going to cover again in a different video, he's doing a D chord, A major, E major, F sharp minor. So he goes. Now, when you're playing the D chord, D sort of power chord with no 3rd, what Noel's doing is he's outlining which really clashes quite horribly with the D power chord. So if you have this, along with, really doesn't work very nicely harmonically, but because it's kind of done quite quickly, kind of gets away with it a little bit. But yeah, there is certainly a couple of moments where you're listening to that and you're thinking, is there a wrong note or something? So that's what's going on. That's why it sounds a little bit funny on that section. But anyway, just in case you were wondering theory-wise what's happening, we've got our solo 1 up next, which is really interesting. This quite straightforward but very cool solo. So we're up on the 16th fret with our 3rd finger. This is probably the best first solo for most people to learn if you're looking at complicated, not complicated, but kind of going to melody-driven solos, and I recommend beginners pick this one up for sure. So it's a good introduction to bends as well, because that 16th fret bends up a full tone, so that's 2 frets. And then what you do is you release slightly before you repick, and then you do a sort of release bend. So the whole pattern is, and there's definitely repicks in pretty much every time this is played. And everything's down, so then you get, so alternate between that 16th fret and the 14th fret. Third and first fingers are doing all the work here, so that's how you land in bar 35. Now you're jumping up to the 17th fret. Now Noel Gallagher does it with a third finger again, so he goes and then uses the second finger in the following 16th fret to go, and he just does a full bend and release, and then a repick on the down there. So, and that's nice because it means you don't have to do any fourth fingers or too much moving. So if we take it from bar 35 again, you get third finger, second finger, and then the only other thing that's really worth mentioning is the little twiddle trill here at the end. It's the same as the Layla. There's only 2 picks up to that point. So the first 2 notes are covered by a hammer-on. So that's just 1 down pick with a hammer-on. And then the next one is interesting. All of that is 1 pick. And that 16th fret on the D string is not picked. It's just this note again at the end of the phrase that has the pick on it in bar 37. So one more time you get. Worth doing it like that because then you're sticking with down picks the whole time rather than doing a little cheeky up pick in there. Has a very smooth feeling to it if you do it all down picks like that. So let's carry on now and see how this pans out. We get pretty much the same thing again. So bar 37, we've landed there. Then it happens again. So guitar 1, Noel's guitar on the album, holds that note for ages. It drops after a couple of bars, I think to the 9th fret, if you want to be really specific about where it lands, which is interesting, because it's a dissonance with the C#7 underneath. It has that little kind of dissonant sound, but I quite like it. There's also lots of vibrato. And then we'll just cover off what happens underneath, which is you get this C#7. And then it drops back into... If you're Bonehead, you drop into this in verse 2. Whereas if you're Noel, you go back to your verse 1 pattern that we've covered before in a previous lesson. One other thing just to quickly mention, if you have a tremolo pedal, you can achieve some of the shimmering effects that only really happen on this chord in bar 43. If I put my little tremolo on, it's not quite the right settings again, but if I put it on and play that for you, it has a little bit of a shimmery sound which you can hear on the album. Could add in a little bit of chorus as well. That might just help you achieve the specifics of the album on that particular moment, but I don't think if you're playing it kind of as a live performance, it's really worth pressing that one pedal on just for that second. Just for a couple of seconds of shimmer, but if you want to, it's there. First, third and fourth fingers are going to be doing a lot of work. So the first time you hear it, it goes like this. So that's 3 little quavers on the first time. And then there's a little hammer on that happens next. So keep those third and fourth fingers down. Hammer on the first one. Then jump up. And then the second time it comes around in bar 47, it's different. You get... So you've got to do that hammer on the first beat. So a little bit different. Then we have this next part in bar 49 where you just get... Now that's what Noel does in bar 49. Sometimes Bonehead will play this live as just a chord. And do it like that. Or, as we've previously discussed, there's this blues riff that he'll also do, which we've done in brackets earlier on in this coverage of this track, but I'll just show you the line from that again. You get it as a 12-bar blues shape, so he sometimes does this. To cover these two bars, so... which you can do at this moment. Then we have this return to this F sharp minor. This time, instead of doing a straight F sharp minor sort of power chord type thing, in bar 51 you get a little touch of difference with an F sharp minor 7. So you start off with the F sharp minor power chord. It's just a little inflection which you do hear on the album. Then we're going to bar 53, so we have the same thing. Or Bonehead on the album going... jumping up to bar 55, which is... So we get... So there's a few different things going on here while this chorus 2 is played round 4 times. So the first thing to mention is that the best way I find to play it, and the way that I've seen it played in the early days of Oasis, is the D powery chord sound. So three notes, and then jump over to a full A bar chord, and then drop to an E major. And the E major you can do with the third, fourth and second fingers, so it's as if you're putting the bar behind the nut there. And then a couple of dead notes at the end after your F sharp minor bar. So one more time, it's... That's how I would play it, to copy many different times that I've seen Bonehead play it that way. There's another way of doing it, which is having a first finger and a flat third finger and a major D chord. So I've seen him play it a few times like that, and then he swaps over to the A with a thumb, so you get more like a... but I don't really recommend that one because it's not really the same kind of feel. So you really want to do this kind of power chord version. Once I saw him play it with root position chords, so D, E major, and then F sharp minor right at the end there. So there's a few options for you, but like I say, the number one recommended way is the first one that I've suggested. So let's just follow along with how it sounds on the album, because there's a few differences that happen when Noel plays live, like this outro line here. We've talked about how you pick it and bend fully, and then drop a little bit and then pick again with the release. Sometimes in a live situation, Noel will just use that third finger and just slide the whole first two bits together. We're going to avoid doing that for now because you don't really hear that on the album. There's maybe one occasion where on the fourth time in the first solo you could argue that there's this kind of sort of elision, the sliding of those first notes. But let's follow solo 2, or the outro solo if you want to call it like that, through now from bar 59. So we've got the usual. So that bit's nice and easy, first and third fingers. We're going to do the same thing again here. So third finger on that 17th fret, second finger here, doing the bend release followed by that 14th. Now here, Noel does something a little bit different. He does a 14th, 16th fret, then he catches the bottom string, and then he plays a 16, 14 like that. So it's basically messy. And if you had to press me, I'd probably say that there was a little, not a mistake, but it just didn't come out right, and they thought, well, it sounds cool, so let's leave it. Something a bit sort of messy like that happens. In bar 63, if we carry on, we get this usual. So it's different this time. We'll follow it through to the moment where it changes. So from bar 63, you get this bend up. We carry on. And then you get the different bit, which is at the end of that bar, into bar 65. So the way this bit works in bar 65 is you get... Now that says a half bend. What you then do is you actually don't keep bending. You just play these notes. Just keep bending up slightly. So you get... And then you release. And again, you don't pick, except for the very first time there. It's a kind of pure hammer-on in its own right. And we've reached the end of bar 66 into bar 67, and we get our same pattern again. Now this is where it gets a bit easier now, so it's kind of what we're used to. So that's nice and straightforward. We've had that before. Bar 71, we're carrying on. So it changes slightly here before we get to our next pattern. So if we go from the beginning of bar 73, notice that we've carried on with the... That's the way that this kind of line gets extended. Then we're going into 4 bends. So we get one that's held for 2 crotchets across the bar line. So, and then this one releases, and then you get a dead note after that one. Bar 75 is where it gets different. So this is our little new shape that I was talking about. Very Jimi Hendrix kind of sound. So let's just break it down. So we've got this 14th frets held with the first finger on the D and G strings, hammering on very quickly to that 16th fret. But the 14th on the G string keeps ringing. So you get... And then you get the doublings next. So that little up pick is quite a quick one that's thrown in. And then we go to the bit that crosses the bar. So bars 75 and 76 sound like this all together. Then bar 77, you're starting to mix and match your patterns now. So you've got this Hendrix thing. The difference with this one, I guess, is you repick that 14th fret on the G with the up. So you get... So that's how it finishes there. Bar 79, you've got a similar idea. That takes us to bar 81. You're starting to do that bend that straddles the bar, so 81 into 82. then you get this sort of little different pattern there, and this is where it gets really, really tough. Now, if you're playing a live version, I would suggest that you just start improvising around these shapes. So you go. So something kind of freestyle that uses all those patterns that we've built up so far. So the main solo, the twiddles, and the doubling sort of Jimi Hendrix style lines. Now, this is the real nitty gritty of what happens at the end. So there's two guitars now that layer over each other. So bar 83 and 87 in my tab should be played simultaneously with two separate guitars layered on top. Let's follow the line for guitar 1 if you want to be really specific, but otherwise feel free to opt out of this video now and go for the improvisation option. You've achieved the song because it kind of fades out. So bar 83, guitar 1, you get. So that's how 83 and 84 go. 85 is like this. And that's the end of outro twiddle guitar 1. Then if you want to go for the guitar 2 part instead, you have a totally different line in bar 87, which means that you get this. And that's it for that one. Bar 88, you have a little pause, then a. So a really slow bend releasing to that 14th fret, and you do repick that 14th, by the way, there. Then in bar 89, you get. And that's it. And both of them end on that 14th fret on bar 91 like that. Both the guitar lines in there. And that is the end of Supersonic from Oasis with all the twiddles and fiddles. And it took ages to get those last guitar bits down for you. And you're probably going to ignore them, but it doesn't matter as long as you enjoyed the tab. Free tab below. Thanks for watching the free lessons. The best thing you can do to help the channel is to become a member, which I think is £1 a month. You can just do 1 month. It makes a huge difference in terms of the sustainability of the channel, the reliability of me being able to carry on doing it. But anyway, I just hope you enjoyed the tab. Thanks for watching. And if you want more Oasis, let me know down there which one you want me to do next, or any other tracks. Members particularly can request our tabs. So if you become a member, you can tell me what to do. And we'll head there. Peace out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.